Good morning, club members. We digest world-class journalism and talk it through in plain English. Here are 5 stories worth your time. Volkswagen and Toyota are scrambling to find alternative motor oil for their cars. A spreading conflict in the Middle East has disrupted global engine lubricant supplies. The crisis centers on a severe deficit of high-grade base oil. Base oil is the primary refined ingredient used to make engine lubricants. The supply chain broke down back in March after missile strikes hit Qatar. A major gas-to-liquids processing plant suffered serious damage during those attacks. That single strike cut off a massive share of world production almost overnight. Distressed buyers quickly made frantic calls to find replacement energy suppliers. Several key suppliers sold out completely and declared they could not fulfill orders. For the first few months, major car makers survived by using up existing stockpiles. Now, those emergency reserves across Europe and the US have completely run out. Prices for top-grade base oil have almost tripled since pre-war levels. Buyers now pay around $4,000 per ton in Western markets. Alternative oil producers have very limited volume and operating capacity. Industry executives warn that any further shock could rapidly worsen the situation. Automakers normally enforce strict engineering standards for all engine lubricants. In quiet times, car companies would hesitate to accept alternative oil formulations. Now, desperate manufacturers must be flexible to keep assembly lines running smoothly. Stellantis has already tested and approved substitute products that meet safety rules. Volkswagen warned that the shortage is an industry issue beyond individual control. Even so, the German manufacturer has secured temporary supplies for its factories. Meanwhile, everyday drivers are already feeling the direct consequences of this shortage. Customers at some dealerships in Japan have faced oil change delays since June. Suzuki is now reviewing its entire supply chain to find new base oil partners. One taxi company in Western Japan saw its base oil costs double recently. That price surge forced the taxi business to raise passenger fares for consumers. Energy analysts warn that relief will not come to local garages anytime soon. Shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz remain vulnerable to ongoing regional friction. Even if those sea lanes opened today, fresh shipments would not arrive before October. Car makers must continue balancing quick maintenance fixes against potential engine damage. Routine oil changes remain essential to prevent severe friction and engine breakdown. For millions of vehicle owners, routine servicing is bound to get slower and costlier. Moving on to our second story, we turn from motor oil shortages to financial rivalry. Hong Kong and Singapore are locked in a fierce battle for top investment managers. For years, these two cities have competed to attract global banks and hedge funds. Hong Kong recently launched a powerful attempt to lure high earners back. It proposed sweeping tax cuts on investment profits and performance fees. Under the new plan, carried interest would face a 0% tax rate. That kind of tax relief is immensely appealing to wealthy money managers. A move across the water could save a senior trader millions of dollars. Several Singapore funds warned that key staff were considering a move to Hong Kong, but Singapore is fighting back with a very modern weapon. That weapon is unrestricted access to the world's most advanced artificial intelligence. Financial markets today depend heavily on quantitative funds. Quantitative funds, or quants, use complex mathematical algorithms to beat rival traders. To maintain their edge, these algorithms require constant access to frontier computer models. Here is where Hong Kong runs into a serious technical obstacle. The United States enforces strict technology restrictions on China and its territories. Leading American AI builders block their newest software inside mainland China. Due to compliance risks, major international banks block those same tools in Hong Kong. Quantitative researchers in Hong Kong suddenly find themselves cut off from vital software. Singapore occupies a very neutral position between the United States and China. Businesses in Singapore can freely use leading American tools such as ChatGPT and Claude. At the same time, they can access top Chinese models like Moonshot and DeepSeek. Singapore also enjoys easy access to the powerful computer chips required to run them. That open access gives researchers in Singapore a clear operational advantage. One giant American fund recently presented its Hong Kong research team with an ultimatum. Staff members were told to relocate to Singapore or give up their jobs. Data security concerns drove the firm to move its core intellectual property. Lower taxes will always catch the eye of a high-paid fund manager. Yet, in modern finance, working with secondary technology is a dangerous handicap. Investment firms now face a very difficult dilemma. Financial leaders must decide which advantage matters more to their bottom line. Will they chase 0% taxes, or will they stay where the smartest code lives? From tech talent in Singapore, our third story looks at a massive shift in global education. For decades, ambitious Indian graduates saved money or borrowed heavily to study abroad. Most aimed for master's degrees in the US, Britain, Canada, or Australia. That long-held tradition is turning around quite sharply right now. According to official immigration data, student numbers going abroad fell by nearly one-third. Over 800,000 students left in 2023 to March. By 2025, that total dropped down to about 620,000. The decline is hitting all four major Western destinations at the same time. Student arrivals in Canada dropped 41%, while Britain saw a 28% fall. The US and Australia both registered drops of around 13%. For many families, sending a child overseas meant taking on enormous financial debt. Loans typically ranged from $20,000 to well over $100,000. Parents accepted that huge risk because a foreign job paid in strong currency. Earning dollars or pounds made repaying the large education loan manageable. That equation breaks down when governments tighten their immigration rules. Canada capped international study permits and tightened work permissions after graduation. Britain banned most foreign students from bringing family members along with them. Australia raised financial proof limits, while US visa policies grew increasingly unpredictable. Without guaranteed work permits after finishing school, the financial risk has grown far too high. So where are these bright young graduates choosing to go instead? They are increasingly choosing to pursue higher education right at home in India. Online search interest for Indian master's programs nearly doubled in the past year. Top domestic universities offer solid degrees without forcing families into massive debt. Staying local removes the stress of currency exchange and distant visa hurdles. Intriguingly, students from outside India are also starting to take notice. Searches for Indian master's degrees by foreign students more than doubled this year. Much of that new interest comes from China and neighbouring South Asian nations. Western countries long counted on foreign tuition fees to support their university budgets. Now, tighter border policies are steering top talent toward emerging domestic hubs. India now has a rare window to strengthen its own higher education sector. Whether local campuses can build enough high-quality capacity remains the open question. For our fourth story, we move from international students to a critical business fight in Ukraine. A major Ukrainian iron ore producer called Ferrexpo is running out of time. The company says it might exhaust its cash by mid-September. Russian attacks have already damaged its power lines, ports and cargo ships. Earlier this month, drone strikes forced the company to stop mining entirely. It now relies on selling iron ore from existing stockpiles. Yet war damage is only half of the company's struggle. The rest comes from a fierce dispute with its own government in Kyiv. Ferrexpo is listed in London and was once a major exporter worth $3 billion. Today, its market value has dropped to about $200 million. Trading in its shares was suspended after auditors refused to approve its financial accounts. The trouble centers on its largest shareholder, a wealthy oligarch named Kostyantin Zhevago. He holds a 49% stake in the business through a trust. Ukrainian prosecutors accuse him of embezzlement linked to a bank collapse in 2015. Last year, the government placed personal sanctions on the billionaire. Following those sanctions, tax authorities froze $90 million in tax refunds owed to Ferrexpo. Company managers argue they are unfairly caught between the state and their founder. The government is withholding tax refunds to force the billionaire out of the business. Officials want him to give up his shares before offering any help. However, the billionaire refuses to step down or sell his stake. That leaves 6,000 industrial workers caught right in the middle of the feud. To survive, Ferrexpo must raise at least $100 million of fresh capital very soon. Yet it had only $27 million of accessible cash in late June. Major international investors hesitate to put in new money during an active legal war with Kyiv. If no solution appears in the coming weeks, this massive mining firm faces insolvency. That would bring down a vital part of Ukrainian industry when the nation needs every dollar. After looking at mining battles in Ukraine, our final story today takes us somewhere quite surprising. How does a famous phone maker survive after everyone stops buying its products? 15 years ago, almost every politician and Hollywood star carried a BlackBerry handset. Barack Obama famously refused to give up his phone when he moved into the White House. People called the devices addictive, and the brand dominated the global mobile market. Then Apple introduced touch screens, and BlackBerry lost its place in our pockets. It stopped making phones 8 years ago, in 2016. Most observers assumed the Canadian company would quietly fade away. Instead, BlackBerry spent a decade reshaping its entire business. Back in 2010, it bought an operating system called QNX. 4 years later, it added a German security firm specializing in anti-eavesdropping software. Those quiet acquisitions are now paying off in a huge way. Today, BlackBerry does not build mobile phones at all. Instead, QNX powers the digital brains inside modern vehicles around the world. Nearly every major car maker uses it for dashboard displays and driver safety systems. The company is expanding quickly across electric car design in Europe, China, and North America. Beyond cars, the same software controls medical devices, industrial robots, and space satellites. At the same time, its encryption software protects critical government communications. 20 national governments and NATO use the tech for secure calls and messages. Rising global tension has caused many countries to boost defense spending recently. That shift created strong demand for high-level security tools. As a result, BlackBerry reported positive cash flow in its latest financial quarter. It was its strongest start to a fiscal year since 2017. The chief executive says the company has moved from transformation into a period of growth. Over the past year, its stock value jumped by 150%. The business is now valued at around $5.2 billion. That is still far below its old peak of $83 billion. Yet its software is more deeply embedded in daily life than its physical phones ever were. You probably use BlackBerry products every single day without ever seeing a screen. The main uncertainty now is whether new competitors will challenge its lead in car software. For now, the former phone giant has pulled off a rare technology comeback. That brings us to the end of today's stories. Thank you for sharing your breakfast with me, and I will see you tomorrow morning.